delegation. What is delegation? Delegation is how you free up your time and create more capacity for yourself by identifying things that are currently your responsibility that aren't critical to your job description or things that others can do. And through a process of training and handing things off, you give those responsibilities to others. So how do you effectively delegate? Well, I'd like us to look towards an example, maybe an example from a long time ago that's still very relevant for today. So if you're thinking about delegating some things off your plate, then you're probably at a place where you are responsible for some people. Was it 5 people, 10 people, 50 people? Well, let me tell you the story about someone who was responsible for over 1 million people and how delegation became a critical tool for him to be able to not only survive and sustain himself, but also to be able to help the people that he served thrive. You've probably heard the name Moses. Well, in the book of Exodus, chapter 18, you see this unique situation where Moses is handling almost everything himself. And depending on whose numbers you're counting, 1 to 2 million people are under his charge. One of the days, as he's sitting out there trying to do his job and really do everything, his father-in-law, of all people, walk up and he says, his name's Jethro, he walks up and he says, what you're doing is not good. In fact, you're going to burn out yourself. You're going to have a negative impact on your family, and you're really not going to serve these people well. So what he unpacks is a principle for delegation that has been around for thousands of years. And you know what? It still works today. So let's break it down. So let's get into the 5 components of effective delegation. But we're going to add on some AI enhancements through KnowHow. Right out of the gates, the very first thing that you might be thinking about is, hold on a second, if I'm going to give responsibility from my plate to their plate, what if they make a mistake? What if they don't know what to do? How do I know that they're doing things the right way when I'm not there? Natural questions, especially when things not going well could impact things like your variable compensation, the reputation of the company, even the trust that someone gave to you. So let's talk about how to get it right. When you're thinking about delegating a task, the first thing you do is not think about all the things I don't want to do. That's not where you start. The very first thing you do is you make a list of what are the most important things that really only you can do. It's about identifying what is the best use of your time. Think of the things that would be mission critical, things that you do that bring the most value to the organization. Once you have that list, it actually becomes pretty easy to identify where do you need to spend your most productive time, your most impactful time, and then really anything that doesn't fall into that list needs to find its way onto the plates of others. Now you need to select trustworthy, capable people that can take on these tasks that are going to move off your plate. Now, capable is different than skillful. We use this story from Exodus 18 of Moses and his father-in-law Jethro. Well, the language that they use is find capable people. Now, capable means that they're capable of rising to the challenge with the right support and the right guidance. It's very common. I would say almost broadly speaking, it's almost always the case that when you're delegating something to someone, you actually have to provide them with skills, provide them with the training, provide them with step-by-step guidance so that when they're out there doing it on their own, they can reference that guidance and tackle the task confidently. If you want to give something to someone and they don't feel like they're going to be supported, trained, or have the resources needed to be successful without you, they're going to be reluctant to take on that responsibility and be able to give you back the capacity that you're after. So how do you find these people? Again, look for people who are capable. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've done the thing before. What it does mean is that in various situations, they've demonstrated that they're a person with good character. There's someone who has demonstrated the ability to learn. There's someone who's coachable and trainable. And ideally, there's someone who is willing to communicate with you and be able to listen and to be able to explain things back to you very clearly. Once you find those types of people, especially people who are motivated, who demonstrate that they are the type of person where they want to be able to take on more, ask them, there are some things that I would love to be able to move into the domain, onto the plates of others so that I can take on some other things. I can focus on these bigger things that are going to create opportunity for us. Would you be interested in taking on some more responsibility? And that is how you implement component 2. All right, let's talk about component number 3. So you've made a list, right? You've identified some trustworthy, capable people. Now, the third thing you have to do is you have to make time to train. This is one of the most difficult things because you need to delegate things off your plate because you're probably overloaded, right? You got too much going on. At the end of the day, you're going to have to dig down deep, open up some space to be able to train that person, to guide that person, to support that person so that they can move from a place of a lack of confidence and competence to a foundation of competence, and they're feeling confident that they can do things without you. No question, if you gain a reputation in your team as someone who just dumps things on people without providing support and training, people are going to be very reluctant to agree to take things off your plate. But if you build a reputation as someone that when it comes to taking on tasks and taking things off your plate, people receive support, encouragement, and clear training, and ideally resourcing, well, then you are going to have people lining up outside the door to be able to work with you to take on responsibility. So how do you create time to train? And how do you create time to do these types of things? Well, you're going to have to find an ability to be able to coordinate moments in your schedule, in this individual schedule, ideally when you're doing the task productively for real, meaning that these are shoulder-to-shoulder moments where you can walk someone through how you do it, ideally role modeling it in a real-world setting. If that's not possible, then oftentimes role-playing can be a tremendous opportunity for you to be able to explain to a person how you word things, how you phrase things, how you structure things, and to be able to demonstrate to them how the task is done. So once you have created space to train and you've properly provided that person training, then you can move on to the fourth component of being able to effectively delegate responsibilities. All right, let's talk about big number 4. The fourth component of delegation, critical, is trust. Now, what we mean by trust is that you have to be able to trust the people that you give the task to be able to actually move the task or the project or the activity ahead without you. Now, newsflash, they're probably going to make some mistakes. And at the end of the day, remember, so did you when you were learning things and you were coming to this place of competence in your role. The fact that you even know how to do this task, the fact that you can train it, you could probably list out some examples of mistakes that you made and things that actually, in effect, in a sense, kind of codified and solidified your knowledge through the mistakes that you've made in the past. Trust is an important thing because more than you want your time back, you also want your focus back. And so if that individual is out there moving along a task or tackling a project that you've delegated, and look, your mind is kind of racing between the task in front of you and worrying whether or not that person is doing things the right way, one of two things is happening. Either you haven't trained that person properly and you know that they've got, I like to call it kind of Swiss cheese understanding of a task, or you are being a bit of a micromanager, a bit of a controller, and you're not allowing your mind to really stay focused, allow that person the trust to be able to move that task ahead, and then next time you get with them, to be able to have kind of a bit of a one-on-one discussion to unpack how things went. Again, creating airspace for them to be able to report back with some examples of things that maybe they didn't do things exactly the way you would have, but you can kind of coach them back into alignment. So if you want to be a good delegator, you have to get to a place where you, component number 4, you trust the individual to move the task, the project, or the activity ahead, and then to be able to circle back with them, unpack how it went. If you want more than just your time back, but you want your focus back, you're going to have to learn how to trust. All right, let's talk about component number 5. Good delegators understand the difference between delegation and abdication. When you are delegating things off your plate to people on your team to give yourself essentially more time to focus on the critical priorities, it's not about making your life easier. In fact, what I would say is that delegation is really about moving things off your plate that are simpler, that are actually easier, perhaps lower stakes, so that you can focus on the more complex, often higher stakes situations. Sometimes that means actually giving your staff things that are easier to tackle while you tackle the things that are honestly complex, sometimes require a careful hand. Sometimes they're the things that actually include things like conflict and things like, some of the more strenuous kind of activities that really require management and experience. Abdication is, in a sense, giving not only the responsibility to someone, but saying that actually I don't even want to take any responsibility for the outcome of what I'm giving you. And so you're almost pushing someone out of the tent that is your team, and you're leaving them out in the cold. Good delegators don't abdicate the outcome. They extend themselves through their people and give them the opportunity to serve as an extension of the larger things that we're trying to move ahead, so that they can create space for you to be able to work on the more complicated, more higher stakes projects that oftentimes are the work that's more complex, more difficult, and sometimes more uncomfortable. But that's why you are the one that takes on those things. So are you ready now to supercharge delegation? Enter KnowHow. KnowHow is the best dance partner for someone who wants to be a very skilled delegator. KnowHow makes it very easy for you to create a clear description of what the process is about, and then to outline step by step what are the activities that are necessary to accomplish that task, that project, that process according to your standard or the company's standard. Now, what's better than just simply giving someone the task, giving someone the steps, is being able to know, did they do the things that I wanted them to do the way I wanted them to be done when I wasn't there? Again, we talked about earlier that if you really want to be able to delegate well, you're not just trying to create more time, you're trying to create more focus for yourself. And so to be able to put your mind at ease, KnowHow makes it very easy for you to be able to see, in a sense, almost what were the digital footprints that they took on that task. KnowHow makes it easy for you to see who did it, when did they do it, where were they standing when they did it, and to be able to have that easily accessible so that I can actually hand things over, evaluate it, and then when I get with the person on my team and kind of walk through it with them, we can talk in much more granular detail. You're not a great people developer if you just simply ask, how did it go? No, you want to pull up that process and walk through it and say, what steps did you feel confident in? What steps did you feel like you were a little bit loose on? And let's do a little bit of a retraining exercise here. KnowHow makes it so easy for you to be able to define how you want something done, hand it over, to be able to monitor if they did things the right way, to be able to have kind of a post-activity discussion. And here's the best part. And then you taught them how to then take someone else through that, so that when you elevate yourself and they move themselves up, and then it's time for them, right, to delegate that task to someone else as they take on more complex tasks, they are going to repeat the process that you showed them for being able to use KnowHow to be able to delegate things off their plate into the hands of capable others so that they can focus on bigger things.